In this set of lecture videos, I'm going to talk about the free exercise clause in the First Amendment, and then also freedom of expression, freedom of speech, which we've talked about before. And I'm going to reiterate some things, bring up a more nuanced development in the court's rulings on this, and then I'm going to make a prediction. In May of 2022, I'm going to make a prediction, and it'll be recorded for all time, and so I'll either seem like a genius or a dope. Okay, so the free exercise clause. Again, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law limiting the free exercise of religion. We know through the process of selective incorporation that the courts have said that this also limits state governments. So what are the limits on this? In terms of Supreme Court rulings, there are some schools, and this is pre the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, they have said that there are schools can require students to be vaccinated. That is constitutional. It is constitutional to require vaccinations, and the reason for it is public safety. Now, at the same time, what some schools allow and what the courts have allowed are religious exemptions. So there are some religious faiths that don't believe that vaccinations are God's will. They believe that God will protect people against diseases, and so they don't want to get their kids vaccinated. They can't get their kids vaccinated based on their religious beliefs. It's not a right-left thing. It's not a Democratic-Republican thing. It's a deeply held religious belief. The courts have said that the schools can require vaccines, but they've also allowed schools to give exemptions for people who have religious objections, and many schools do allow that. Some schools don't, but it is constitutional to require them. There was a court case where a group of people were using a hallucinogenic, it's called peyote, and they said that they were doing so as part of their religious ceremony, and that is true that in some Native American faiths, the peyote was used as part of a religious ceremony. But the courts have said that prohibiting the use of hallucinogenics in religious services is constitutional. Once again, just like the requirement for vaccines, there has to be a compelling interest. Well, what's the compelling interest in terms of vaccines? Public safety. What's the public interest in terms of prohibiting the use of hallucinogenics? Public safety. And so, as I said before, all our rights, all our liberties are conditional when the government has a compelling interest when it comes to protecting public safety. And so the courts have said requiring vaccinations and prohibiting the use of hallucinogenics are examples of this limitation on the free exercise of religion. As far as freedom of speech goes, we've talked about this before. In Schenck versus the United States, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal government can limit speech that creates what they called in that case a clear and present danger, right? That was Schenck versus the United States, 1919. As we talked about also in 1925, so 6 years later, the Supreme Court ruled in Gitlow versus New York that state governments can limit speech that creates a clear and present danger. Well, a lot of that was modified in an important case called Brandenburg versus Ohio. Now, this is the facts of the case in Brandenburg versus Ohio. Mr. Brandenburg was arrested for violating a state law or a federal law. Brandenburg versus Ohio. A state law, correct. Well, Mr. Brandenburg was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and he was calling for a march on Washington to end the oppression of white people. And he was arrested for violating an Ohio state law, and he sued. He sued on the grounds that the state law for which he was arrested for violating was violated his First Amendment rights. And he sued the state of Ohio, and the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court actually agreed with his argument. They said, you're right. They said, this idea of a clear and present danger, that's too vague. That's too vague. The government only has a compelling interest in limiting freedom of speech when that speech can lead to imminent lawless action. Now, let me explain what that means. Well, you know what lawless action means, action that breaks the law. But when they use the word imminent, what they said that if somebody gives a speech that is going to lead to imminent or immediate lawless action, that's one thing. The government can limit that kind of speech, but not speech that might or might not lead to lawless action. Right? There's no way that unless the government can prove that the speech that was being said was going to lead to imminent lawless action, right? The government cannot limit it. So, in other words, if somebody's standing outside the White House and they're saying, well, we need to pull up rocks and we need to, storm the gates here and we need to take over and get the president and hang the president or whatever, right? And if people are walking by like, dude, it's crazy, man. And everybody's ignoring them, and there's no chance that this is leading to imminent lawless action. We just have one crazy guy like yakking. That can't be restricted. But that same speech, if people start collecting, if it looks like a riot is about to break out, and if this person continues to say that speech can be limited. Because that speech is leading to imminent lawless action. All of which brings us to a very important question that has been, up to now at least, debated. And it's a speech where some people said that a speech given by President Trump led to what's called the insurrection, led to the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. And I'm just going to read the last part of President Trump's speech. I'm going to try not to break into a Trump impersonation, but because he has such a unique way of speaking, I may do it anyways. But at the end of the speech, this is what he says. Our brightest days are before us. Our greatest achievements still await. I think one of our greatest achievements will be election security, but no one until I came along had any idea how corrupt our elections were. And again, most people would stand there at 9 o'clock in the evening and say, I want to thank you very much. And then they go off on some other life. But I said, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong. Can't have happened. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Our exciting adventures, our boldest endeavors have not yet begun. My fellow Americans, for our movement, for our children, and for our beloved country, and I say this despite all that's happened, the best is yet to come. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. We're going to the Capitol, and we're going to try and give. The Democrats are hopeless. They never vote for anything, not even one vote. We're going to try and give, and our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any help, we're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take our country back. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I want to thank you all. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you all for being here. This is incredible. Thank you very much. And I have to tell you, maybe I'll be proven wrong. But this does not meet the criteria laid out in Brandenburg. This is not a speech that led to imminent lawless action. It may very well be, when the dust is settled, President Trump is charged with some crimes. Conspiracy, perhaps. I think there may be some serious problems with false electors that were presented. I don't know. But I hear a lot of people talking about this particular speech and the particularly part of the speech where he says, and we fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. The standard that they set, the Supreme Court set in Brandenburg, was much higher than that in my estimation. And again, while I don't have any idea what the outcome of some of the legal disputes will be over the insurrection on January 26th and the activities that were taken prior to that, President Trump's attempt to get the Georgia Secretary of State to change the vote count, again, the false electors, any of that. I make no prediction about that. I'm not a lawyer. But this does not rise to the level of imminent lawless action. And if you ever listen to the video, the crowd doesn't even sound like it's ready to go and attack the Capitol. Not discounting what happened at the Capitol. I'm just saying this speech doesn't meet the standard, in my estimation, set in Brandenburg versus Ohio. I could be wrong. The future will tell. But that's it. I just wanted to weigh in on that.